across Europe, the Middle East, and Australia. She holds postgraduate degrees in educational technology from the University of Southern Queensland in 2005 and professional education practice from the Open University in 2017. She has trained hundreds of individuals over the years in a variety of courses and workshops such as Train the Trainer, presentation delivery skills, presentation writing, business writing, as well as leadership and performance and team building. To name a few, she worked with prestigious companies like Octal, Omantel, Bank Muscat, Bank Dhofar, Salalah Port, and Salalah Free Zone. She has facilitated training seminars and workshops for some of the Australia's premier companies, including Australia Post and Clipsal, and also in Europe for one of the largest contact center companies in the world. Years of training in the Middle East and the worldwide has provided her with expertise that has given her edge in training individuals effectively and with impact. Today, we at Dhofar University have the pleasure to listen to her on the topic, Reflective Practice for Teachers. I welcome Ms. Deeble to address all of us. And in fact, we really thank her because it's very, very early in the morning for her. It's 8 o'clock. It's 8 o'clock and it's too early for her. And we are really honored to have you here, ma'am. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kavita, and thank you everybody else for joining us. I see a few people are still connecting to audio. Hopefully you'll all catch up. It's lovely to be here, and actually I think I see a few names that I recognize from my time living and working in Salalah. So that's very nice. Not all of us work together in a professional capacity, but it's lovely to see you here, and hopefully we will all get something of benefit out of today's program. So we're looking at the process of reflective practice in teaching. So the way I want to look at this today is I prefer to run as much as possible interactive workshops. It's not just about me sitting here as it is today, rather than standing in front of you all, where you can feel free to ask questions. Dr. Kavita is going to be checking the chat for me, but also please, I will be asking you questions. Do feel free to unmute your mic and answer the question, and I'll also be asking you for your ideas. We're all educators here, as far as I'm aware, and it's not that I necessarily know more than yourselves or less than yourselves. I'm not sure what's happening at the moment. Is somebody sharing their screen? I don't know if everybody else can see it. I'm seeing Zosman's screen at the moment. Am I supposed to be seeing that? Let me just, let's see. Ah, there, we're back again. I do apologize for that. There was a slight technical hitch there. So where was I? Yes. So I will be sharing a dreaded PowerPoint with you all, though don't worry, it's not going to be death by PowerPoint, where I'll be asking for your input. So hopefully you'll all be able to annotate the screen. If you haven't done that, we'll talk about how you can do that when we get to that point. I'd love people to share their ideas and any practice or anything that they've done in the area of reflective practice in teaching as well. So what we're going to look at today really is the why, the what, and the how of reflective practice. This is probably something you all do all of the time to a lesser or greater extent. it's a little bit different than I was expecting. For example, today we're all on Zoom, and normally when you're in a Zoom meeting, you can see yourself. And what happens when you see yourself on Zoom? You think, oh, I better sit back, I look better like this. Or you think, oh, I've got to adjust my headphones because I can't hear. And this is all reactive reflection on what we're doing in that moment. And again, you probably all do it all the time when you're delivering your lectures and other things like that. But what today is about is perhaps looking at reflective practice in a more structured manner, because outcomes that get measured are achieved. And if we have a format, a process in which we can actually use reflective practice in a proactive way rather than in a reactive way, then we're going to be able to use it to take ourselves beyond where we are and achieve the outcomes that we've set ourselves, whether it be individually, in our teaching practice, in our college's practice, in the university's practice. So it's embedded in all of those different levels. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to share my screen, and I'll be asking people to, if they wouldn't mind, unmute themselves and answer some of the questions. Now, there's quite a lot of us here, so it might be a little bit noisy to start with if people are giving their ideas. Unfortunately, I don't have a list of names, so I can't specifically call on somebody to answer any given question. We should be able to see who is talking, so hopefully I can then address them and ask them to continue with their piece of information. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen now. Make sure I've got the right one. Okay. All right, so can everybody see that screen at the moment? Why can't I see me at the moment? Okay. Oops, now it's moving around too quickly. I do apologize. Get my mouse out, that's probably the safest way of doing this. So if everybody could unmute and let me know if you can see the screen fine, please.
Yes, it's clear.
Lovely, thank you very much. I appreciate that. All right, can somebody perhaps describe to me what is actually being shown in this picture?
Collaborative work, teamwork,
Mm-hmm.
joint
work.
accomplishing a task.
Accomplishing a task. Dr. Laura, did you say something?
A heavy work needs cooperation.
Yeah, so cooperation going on.
Wrong,
All right.
wrong concept. Concept is wrong.
The concept is wrong. So how do you, that was Julius, yes? Is that correct?
Work. Julius, yes.
Yes, so Julius, tell me why you think the concept is wrong here.
Instead of the wheels, can you see they are carrying wheels, I think, but very simply without, I mean, with less manpower, they could have used the wheels instead of that squared ones.
Okay, yes, yeah.
Easy to move.
Yeah, exactly. So can everybody else see that at the moment? Let me just get my spotlight. So here, the wheels are square. Yes, they're working together, which is fantastic. And they're trying to move everything along to wherever it is that they're going, somewhere over here. But exactly as Julia said, they haven't considered how they could make it easier, better, and more effective. So when we look at this picture, the reason I've chosen this is, how do you feel this might demonstrate an organization? using square wheels instead of the round wheels in the cart? How might that demonstrate what goes on in organizations?
It means the processes, the wrong processes, the wrong policies, and not very effective procedures.
Yeah, exactly. So rather than looking at what we can do better, we just continue to do the thing that we've always done. We don't look and see what else we can do. What about from an individual perspective?
I think it calls on reflection. We need to reflect on our practices.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, you know, you're all educators. I don't know how long you've been doing it for. As Dr. Kavish said, I've been in the education industry for the past 20 years. And we do things one way and we keep doing them and we keep doing them that way because that's the way we've always done them. And we might sit there and scratch our heads and think, well, why didn't that work or whatever, but we don't do anything about it. So what we need to think about is the square wheels are the things that we've always done or continue to do, and they don't necessarily help us to achieve what we're trying to do in the most efficient and effective and effortless way. So if you look at the top of the thing, the round wheels have always existed, but we just haven't necessarily identified them yet or implemented them. So this is what reflective practice is about. It's about looking at what we're doing, why it's not working, and how we can adapt what we're doing to make it work in a way that is going to provide the outcomes that we actually want. So why do you think it might be important to reflect in a structured way as opposed to in a general, oh, that didn't really work very well way? So why is it important to reflect on our teaching practice?
So that we can make necessary adjustments whenever needed.
Yeah.
We keep teaching going on and to suit circumstances, because we have different circumstances that we encounter every single day we go to class.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Abdul. Exactly. And by making these changes, we're actually making an informed action. Whatever we're doing is also justifiable and explainable. So if you've changed the way you do something because you've reflected, then you can actually say the reason I'm doing this is because. It allows you, exactly as you said, Abdul, to adjust and respond in a proactive way. It can help promote a positive learning environment, can make it more student-centered, and it gives us the opportunity to develop a repertoire of relevant and context-specific strategies that help us to move forward. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your help with that. Lovely. All right, so is my mouse working? So what is reflective practice in and of itself? It is the ability to reflect on one's own actions, and basically it amounts to continuous improvement. Now, we often talk about continuous improvement from a business perspective, but we don't normally think about it from a personal perspective. We all know we have to do our professional development training and keep up to date and things like that, but we don't think about it as an ongoing thing sometimes that we can do for ourselves. So that's what reflective practice is. There's several different models out there, and once we finish this, please, perhaps if you're interested, explore what is out there. What I'm going to be looking at today is just one model, and your style may be slightly different, and it's all about what works for you, not just what I suggest. We all have different styles, we all have different ways of doing things. So today we're going to look at Gibbs' reflective cycle, which he developed in 1998, or certainly published then. And it's a 6-stage approach based on Kolb's experiential learning cycle, which I probably don't need to go into too much detail as you're all educators, but basically that starts with experience, reflection, theorizing, and experimenting. So he's taken the reflection element and he has turned it into a cycle in and of itself. So the reflective cycle, so this is going to be a model of reflective practice. If I'm going too fast or too slow, please let me know. I am aware that there is a time limit today, and we do have quite a bit to get through though. Thank you. So the reflective cycle starts with the description. So basically, what happened? You choose something that you're going to talk about or think about, you're going to reflect on, and you need to somehow describe it. And we'll be looking at a process of how to do this shortly. So please don't be too concerned if I'm going through this a little bit quickly. So after the description, you have to look at the feelings. What were you thinking? What were you feeling? Because sometimes that can actually affect what happened. Your practice may have been perfect, but it may have been a day when you didn't quite have the right moment, or there may have been something outside of the practice that was affecting you, or perhaps even your students. Then you need to have an evaluation session. So basically, in its simplest terms, what was good, what was bad? And those are the very simple ways of thinking about it. I don't really like such black and white terms as good and bad, but that's the simplest way of thinking about it, and we'll address how to look at that a little bit later. Then we come into the analysis, and this is, well, certainly the evaluation and the analysis are probably the 2 steps that take this beyond our reactive reflection that we do all the time. For example, when you're in class, you think this isn't working, what can I do differently? And you may change how you're delivering your lecture or whatever it may be. But reflective practice in a structured format has you looking at analysis as well. From there, you make a conclusion. What else could I have done? What could I have done differently to have made a better session? It may not be that the session was bad, but you're also looking to see what you can do to improve it. And that's what the continuous improvement area is all about. Finally, that moves into an action plan. If I did it again, what would I do? Which then leads us back into the description, and the cycle is ongoing. So when we think about this, there's a couple of things you need to think about. Mainly, you can only change what is in your control to change. If when you come to the evaluation and the analysis and the conclusion, and you think about what you did, what worked, why it did, why it didn't, what else you could have done, if it's something that's outside of your control, there are different routes, obviously, to address that issue. But basically, if it's within your control, you use reflective practice to develop action and change within your own practice. The theory is all very well and good. Do I have any questions on this before I move on?
What's clear? Thank you.
Okay, lovely, thank you. I think I was just saying you're clear. I'm sorry, I can't hear you terribly well. I do apologize. So, theory is lovely, but we need a practical method that we can actually use to help us structure this thinking. So we're going to look at the 6 R's of reflection. And basically these are words that get you to ask questions that enable you to move forward. Now, with these 6 R's, I'm going to go through them as a list, and then we're going to examine each one individually. So you'll have an opportunity to investigate each of the R's more in depth on the next few pages, and I'll be asking you for your ideas at that point. So the first R is reacting, looking at what happened. So you finished your workshop, or you finished your presentation, you finished your lecture, you finished your online training, you finished whatever it might be, and you need to react to that. What worked, basically, or how did it go? What would I like to look at? And this is probably the element that makes this more structured. You're going to have some method of recording what it was. So these two probably come under the description and feeling element of the Gibbs cycle itself. So we all probably react, you know, we leave the workshop or the presentation and go, oh, that went really well, or oh, that went really bad. Why did that happen? And maybe when we're taking our walk along the, you know, the seafront in the evening or something like that, we play it through our heads. That's fantastic, but to make it more structured, we need to then think about how we're actually recording that information that's going through our head. Next is reviewing. So it's thinking about the success or otherwise. So that comes back to that evaluation. And I prefer the terminology success or otherwise rather than good or bad, because it has a varying level of factors rather than just one or the other. So that comes in under evaluation. Now, the next step, which is probably the one most of us don't do so much, is the revising, looking at what can be done. What can I do differently to make what I've reacted on better, or have a stronger outcome, or assist my students getting the results that they need? So that comes under the analysis and the conclusion from the reflective cycle. And then finally, the actual work itself, the reworking. So this is us adapting based on our reflection. So it's taking that delivery plan and saying, well, you know, that worked, but I need to do that first, or they didn't understand that. So it's actually looking at the action plan element of the reflective cycle. It's moving forward and doing something that actually makes the change happen from your reflection. And finally, because it's a cycle, although this is a list, the reassessing. Again, looking at the success or otherwise of the rework. And basically that takes you full circle back to the description element of the reflective cycle. Okay, so as you can see, these give you basic steps that you can take to ensure that you are actually reflecting in a very structured manner. Now, that's all very well and good, but what do those things actually mean, which we're going to look at? But before I move on, any questions? All seems quite good. I'm not hearing anything. You can always ask questions at the end if we need to. That's no problem at all. So, reacting, looking what's happening. This is where I would like people to actually use the screen to annotate if you're able to. If you're not, it may be that you have to give me your words. If you haven't done it before, basically across the top of your screen, you should have a selection I think it's across the top, it may be across the bottom, of options, and one of them should be annotate. Does everybody have that?
Yes, we do.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you so much. So if you click on that and you choose text, which is the easiest thing to write on anything rather than with the draw option. And perhaps if we can use blue to begin with. It doesn't really matter where you go across the screen, because what I'll do is I'll save each of the images and I'll send them back out to people later. Is I'd like you to think and write down your answers of when you think you should react. So the first step of the 6 R's is reacting. When do you think you should react? Just try and write your answers on the screen if possible, please. I've got a couple. We've got 77 people. Surely I haven't only got 2 answers. I know typing takes a little bit longer than speaking. Thank you, Abda. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, most of the students couldn't respond correctly to a question. You can leave them on there, it's okay. Yeah. So most of you are choosing to a certain extent when something went wrong. And reflective practice, remember, is also about looking at successes. Why did something go right? That's also something that you should be thinking about, perhaps. So maybe if I said about also from a time perspective, when should you react? Any thoughts? Yeah, something's not quite right with some of the annotations I do all the time. I like that, Abdul. Maybe not, but yes. Certainly we should reflect reactively all the time. As I said before, what's working, what's not working, what can I do differently to do this? So for example, I'm sort of trying to react at the moment to this. What's going on? Yeah. Lovely. I think maybe some of you are having problems annotating, not a problem, but so yes, I mean, maybe not so much all the time, and certainly not only when things go wrong. But one of the most important things to think about, and again, you're all educators, you probably are very aware of the forgetting curve, or basically how long after something's happened it takes for us to forget. So if something happened on, for example, Wednesday, in a presentation that I delivered, I wouldn't want to wait until the weekend to sit down and think about it. I'd need to do it quite quickly, because if I wait 3 or 4 days, thank you, Julius, perfect. If I wait 3 or 4 days, then it's going to be too far away for me to truly be able to make a description and look at what happened effectively. So you've already started with some great things there. That's fantastic. So my next question, and this is probably what some of these answers are more about, if you could maybe take a red color, if you wouldn't mind changing, and what might you react to? So what are some of the different things? So for example, we've got here, most of the students couldn't respond correctly to a question. So that's looking at the learner's performance. It might be an individual, or it might be all of the students. So that's something you might react to. What else might you be able to react to? Saina just practicing. There's a text option, Saina. Okay. I'm sure there's lots of ideas, but maybe it's not working so well with the annotating on the page. Okay, perhaps somebody, if the annotation is getting too difficult, could somebody perhaps give me their ideas verbally of what they might think they can react to? Oh, beautiful. Thank you, Zaina. Learner, context, and pedagogy. Yeah, pedagogy. Anybody have some ideas they want to share verbally?
Yeah, we can think
thank you.
about
Yeah.
teaching.
Yes,
Yeah,
people,
teaching
there are
style.
some comments which are made.
I'm not. Thank you,
I will
Dr.
read it
Kapita.
out for you.
Lovely, thank you.
When students are not participating,
Yep.
if there is no reaction, then my own performance,
Yeah.
when there is a mismatch, but we should wait before giving reaction. These are the few.
Okay.
These are the few comments or the responses.
Lovely, thank you. Sorry, somebody else was just talking. I didn't quite hear you. Okay, well, I'll be sending something out afterwards, but basically, yes, I think you've covered most of them. So a teaching event, something specifically that happened, a learner's performance, perhaps looking at the assessments, you know, have they not Did everybody else lose the screen just then?
Yeah, temporarily. It's back now.
Okay, it's back now. Great. I think a few people are still connecting. Technology is such fun. Okay, let's go back to where we were. There we are. Okay, yes, unfortunately, all of your annotations disappeared at the same time as well. Okay, so, but basically, yes. Am I going to get rid of that? So, yeah, if an assessment hasn't provided the results that you thought it should, that may be a time when you want to react. Perhaps just looking at part of the curriculum, what is changing or what perhaps should be changed to achieve the outcomes. If you've got some data, you may wish to look at that. And perhaps looking at, talking of today, the effectiveness of technology. So those are all the things we can do. And I think it was Saina who actually wrote something very good about using the learners, the context, and pedagogy. I'm never sure which way you should say it. Andragogy is what I normally deal with, so probably the same way. But yes, you need to reflect through various lenses. So an autobiographical one, looking at yourself, the student, looking at how the student is performing, the college, what's expected of the outcomes of the course, and also your theoretical, your content knowledge and your pedagogy. You do need to reflect on all sorts of different things, but please don't reflect on all of them at the same time. That's not going to work for us. So the next one is logging and recording ongoing reflections. So the system doesn't seem to be working terribly well for the annotations. So let me see if I can do something. Let's start there and see if this is going to work. All right, so can somebody give me an idea verbally, perhaps, of how you might be able to capture information that you wish to review in step 3? Anybody there? Hold on.
Yeah, I think, excuse me, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Yeah, so through survey, we can distribute the questions to the student asking about some feedback.
Okay, lovely. So you could do a survey, yeah. So that's great. So you're collecting data. My Australian friends say data, so I get confused sometimes. What other ways could you record? What happens in Zoom videos? What is one of the things you can do in a Zoom when you're using Zoom?
We can record the event.
Yeah, we can record the event, which can be very useful for going back and seeing what we're doing. What else might we be able to do?
Peer reviews.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. I do apologize.
Peer review.
Beautiful, yes. Peer reviews, that can be a really useful tool. And going with that one, also discussions. So just talking with other people, because as I was saying to Dr. Kavita before everything joined in, you know, particularly now we're perhaps not all in the same location, we don't get those everyday discussions about how things went or what went right and getting other people's input. So discussions that are actually minuted in particular, so perhaps more of a meeting, can be very useful. What else might be useful?
Maybe the feedback during the annual appraisal.
Yep, feedback. I mean, that's going to be sort of perhaps looking at your whole year, but yeah, absolutely useful.
And some formative assessments.
Okay, lovely. So formative, let's help if I can type. Formative assessments, yeah. So they're definitely a way of looking at things. So yeah, the papers that the students have done or something like that. Does anybody here keep a journal, a teaching journal or anything like that?
More like a personal notes, just what works and what doesn't work that day.
Exactly, so you could have personal notes. So it might even be something that you generate into a proper journal. The reason I like to write things down personally is because it's always there, but you've got to go back and look at it. Some people may prefer things like creative imagery. So mind mapping ideas and things like that depends on how your brain works. But yes, so those are sort of some of the ideas, and different things will definitely work in different situations. The important thing is to have some way of recording the reaction and what happened. So today, for example, after this, I might sit down and I'll think about the fact that the Zoom sort of timed in and out and things like that. So I'll write down why that happened, and I'll be thinking then about how often it happened. And then I can start going into the next stage, which is the reviewing stage of how I feel I could perhaps how successful it was and how unsuccessful it was, and maybe there's a different way as I move forward that I can think of dealing with that. So that's why I need to get it recorded. If I wait until Sunday morning, I'm not going to remember what's happened. So getting it down in some way or having some documentation is really important when it comes to recording. Okay. I've just saved that. So let's go to the next page, reviewing. So think about the success or otherwise, and this is really the analysis. Let's get rid of this, annotate, clear. All right, perfect. Okay, so what questions could you ask of yourselves? Perhaps share them verbally, as it's not working on the screen so well.
I think we need to go to number 3, I think.
Oh, so sorry. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So there you go. It always goes wrong somewhere along the line. So think about the success or otherwise. What questions could you ask yourself? So if the annotating's not working, perhaps share verbally, please.
Perhaps we ask what went wrong.
Yeah.
In the lecture or in the presentation, so we can overcome next time and improve.
Yeah, perfect. So what worked, what didn't work? What else could we ask ourselves?
Even though for those things which are working, maybe I can ask myself a question like, can I do it in a different way which is more effective?
Perfect. Yeah, exactly. What could have been done better, more efficiently to improve it? Have I done my job perfectly yet? You could ask yourself that, although I'm not asking for perfection. I certainly can't give it, so I'm not asking for it. How can I increase the, what was that going to say, student performance, maybe? Who was writing that one?
Yeah, enjoyment.
Enjoyment. Yeah, and actually that's a really important thing, isn't it? Because we all know if we enjoy something, we're more motivated to stay involved. Exactly. So I think somebody else had written it. I saw somebody had written achieved. You know, were the results achieved? Was the outcome I was expecting reached? Did we get there? Did the students learn what I expected them to learn? And how do I know that they did? So when we're reviewing, those are the sorts of questions that we need to ask ourselves. And what do you think we need to consider when we're asking these questions? I think somebody's already come up with some things that we had in the recording as well. So, for example, it might be the data, the evidence, the surveys, the papers that they've written, formative assessment, as was being suggested earlier. Certainly what the outcomes expected are we achieving them? What are they expected to do? Am I reaching that point? And again, your content knowledge and your pedagogical knowledge. Am I doing what is best based on the information I now have? What can I do that makes it even better? Yeah, was it interesting or boring? You know, and a lot depends on the particular subject. I know we've got some people here from certain colleges that some people probably find very interesting. For me, I don't think I'd ever find them interesting because it's just not my area of expertise. But it's still actually quite an important question to ask. So the questions you ask yourself all depend on what you've decided to react to and what you've recorded. So your review is always determined by the previous events. Now, I'm going to have to go through this a little bit more quickly because of some of the issues. We're running out of time a bit. So I do apologize. It's going to be a little bit more me talking rather than me asking questions. But that way we'll maybe have some time for questions at the end. So with the reviewing, you also need to think a little bit about what could I try differently next time. And it might be that you have different tasks, clearer instructions, or a different assessment. There's lots of different things you can think about that could change what it is that you're doing. So
if I got you, I mean, maybe we can, to some extent, I can bring the real life in the class.
Yeah, it could be that. If that is what is, and I'm going to, use this word, if it's pedagogically sound, then do it. If it's going to achieve a better outcome, if it's going to help your students, if it's going to improve what it is you're doing, absolutely do that. If it's just because I read this idea and I think it's going to be interesting, is that a sound change?
Actually, those related, for example, to the work, or like critical thinking, if I want to increase in my class, or also placement. Those because related to placement. So I think it works. I don't know.
Exactly. It can definitely work. definitely work. Okay, thank you very much for that. I like the idea of trying to think outside the box, so keep it up. Okay, so we're moving on to revising. Is it going to stay on that page? Good. So this is when we actually look at what we can change or adapt. And exactly, was it Manraj? I do apologize if I can't remember your name correctly or pronounce it correctly. He said, you know, bringing in real world examples or ideas into the classroom, that's something you could change or adapt. So it's about changing your plans, your tasks, maybe your content, your delivery, your assessment, the technology you're using. It's seeing what you can do with what you have to move it forward. I could type it, but it's probably going to take too long. I will send through a PowerPoint screenshot of all of this with all the information on it for you. Probably it'll be tomorrow now, but then if anybody wants it, they can go to the Centre for Teaching and Learning and ask them for a copy of it. So it may be the whole task you change, or it may just be a small bit, or it may be the setup and delivery. I often find when I'm doing things, for example, as Dr. Kavita said, I do a team building workshop. The setup is so important, and if it goes wrong, you're not going to achieve the outcomes you're going to want to have with the group you're working with. So that's something very important to look at. Finally, well, not finally, because it's only 5, the reworking. So it's not enough to just rewrite the plan, decide on changes, exactly. You've got to really think about how you're going to implement the continuous improvement. So what do you need to think about to put the revised ideas into practice? And it's things like technology, equipment that you might use, materials, whether it's new materials or adapted materials, and plans. And you want to think about things before. Make sure you've got the necessary preparation in place. You want to think about things during the workshop. Constantly review, is it going well? Is it effective? Is it successful? Because maybe our new ideas don't work. That can happen as well. And then, of course, after, back into the reflection cycle, which takes us into the reassessing. Dr. Kavita, do we have any questions or anything before I move on with this?
I think so. There are no questions here.
All right, lovely. Well, either I'm doing a great job or everybody's gone to sleep, one or the other. Okay, so what are the most important elements when it comes to reassessing? Anybody come up with some ideas of that verbally, please? What do you think we need to look at when we're reassessing the success of the rework that we've done?
Actually, I think we have to reassess these weak points that which we already identified. Then we need to think: is it the way or the new way we use or we adopted? Is it work or not?
Yeah.
Or we have any improvement or not? So I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much for that. That's probably the most important thing, you know, don't just implement something and go, oh, I've done that now, it's all finished. But exactly, how successful was it? Did the new strategy work? Did I achieve what it was I was expecting to achieve? What changed? Did I get better results with my students? Did they find it more interesting? Were their formative assessment results better? Were the peer reviews improved? It's looking at all of those different elements to make sure that what you've done works. And then, of course, because it's a cycle, what further areas of potential change or success or whatever has this brought up? So it might be that, okay, that was great. So now, but I realized if I sit back and reflect on this properly, if I did something slightly different with my planning, that would then improve that end result even more. So you go back to the beginning of the cycle with your description and your reacting. So it's quite important to think of it as a continuous cycle. It's not something you do and then put it to bed and it's no longer important. Okay, now there's a lot of words and a lot of models and everything else I've given you. So I'm now going to give you what I call my quick and dirty reflection model, which was developed by Rolf et al. 2001. There are, various links around. So basically, what happened? So what does it mean? What next? What needs to happen next? So most of us can remember those basic questions. What, so what next? And that enables you to know that that is how you're going to be reflecting. If you've incorporated some form of recording for yourself, a diary or a journal or something like that, or adapting your plans and things, then you're going to have the answers. Sorry, Mohammed? Sorry, I don't think, Mohammed, if you're not talking with us, can you turn off your, somebody mute him? Thank you. Okay, let me see, I don't. I think we're okay now, sorry. So the next thing moving forward, a little bit like I say, record everything. I really thank you all for coming here and your time basically today, but and it was invitational, and this is invitational as well, but I think that we need to consider putting an action plan into place for our own personal reflective practice. Basically, as I said at the beginning, what gets measured gets done. And actually, if we write down our goals or put things into practice, depending on which study you look at, basically, you are more likely to achieve those goals between 42% and 80% compared to people who don't write down what it is that they plan to do. And it's all to do with hippocampus and encoding with what we're going to do. The things we put into our brain that way tend to stay better. So if you have an action plan, it gives you a crystal clear direction of what you've got to do. Your action plan will provide you with undivided attention and focus. It means you know it's there, you can see it, you become more committed. The action plan template shows your progress. You can feel more motivated and driven. You can prioritize your work easily, and you feel less stress and more satisfaction. Now, I'm not going to tell people how they should create their action plan, because different action plans work differently for different people. Some people may want to write them down. People prefer to use apps. There's all sorts of ways. Somebody prefer to use an Excel spreadsheet. The choice is yours, how you choose to do it. But what I'd like us to do is think about your own action plan once you've left here today. Everybody, I'm sure, has already heard of this, yes? So what does the S stand for, please? In a SMART goal. Any?
Specific.
Thank you very much. Yeah, specific. The M?
Measurable.
Measurable.
Measurable, lovely. Thank you very much. The A?
Active.
It could be active, definitely, but also achievable and something that you can actually see. R?
Realistic.
Realistic, yeah. And I also think in this circumstance, relevant is sometimes used as well. Make sure it's about something that you're going to actually benefit from. And the T?
Timed.
Timed, exactly. Don't just say, I'm going to do this some point in the future. Make a plan for yourself and give yourself that action plan. Now, with that, I want you to think about what. Not every area of your practice is going to need reflecting, and you shouldn't reflect all the areas to begin with. If you try and do that, you're going to be overwhelmed, and basically you're not going to succeed. With plans again, and with goals and actions, if you have too many, they're not going to work. If you have a list of 10 different goals, the likelihood is you're only going to achieve 2 or 3. The 3 is pushing it. And then you feel like you've failed because you've set your goal beyond something that actually we as humans are able to program into our brains. So set yourself just a couple of goals. Maybe look at your own teaching, reflect. Somebody mentioned your yearly appraisal. Think back on what areas you think maybe you should be addressing, and only start a reflection plan about them. Don't think about doing it for every single thing within your own practice. You need to think about why. Based on that, basically it's about the purpose, the reason, not just because I should do it, but because it's going to actually give me that continuous improvement. And then of course the how I'm going to do it, the using the 6 R's: reacting, recording, reviewing, revising, reworking, and assessing. And finally, don't reflect all the time in a structured way. Do it perhaps once a week or after a particular lesson, and choose the item that you've chosen to reflect on. If something obvious comes up, then do it, but don't make it difficult for yourself. Make it deliberate and meaningful. Finally, these are my sources. There's lots of sources out there. You don't have to go exactly with what I've done. It's all dependent on what works best for you. So why is reflective practice important? Anybody? Any thoughts? How do you see it helping you?
Can I say something here? Can I add, can I say something here?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. And one of my observations that, you know, and from experience, don't you agree or don't you think if we focus on action, reflection in action, might reduce the defects in the product and avoid those, you know, misconceptions that might be you know, found when we reflect on action. On action is a kind of result. We reflect on the result, and in action we reflect, you know, while we are processing the teaching, implementation activities. So don't you agree with this?
Absolutely. And as I said through, we use reflection reactively, or as you've said, in action all the time in our presentation. We have to adapt, we have to change things, we have to use our skill set to ensure that what we're doing is working. And then what's good afterwards is to sit down and think about it in a more structured manner, so that next time it's not something that's in action, you've already actioned it and you put it into place. But that's why it's continuous, and actually part of the program is reassessing as you're going along as well. So it's that before, during, and after all the time. As educators.
Yeah, excellent. One more thing, and final thing. And if you try to, implement, reflections, cycles. Okay, as a structure, plant structure, and avoid the spontaneous spirit of reflection while you are doing your activities. Don't you think that will be an extra, effort and work on the teachers when we work with the, documents and work with plans, work with, some kind of, planning activities related to reflection cycles. And when it becomes, a spontaneous, attitude from teaching as a teaching culture, it will help the teacher as, as a continuous,
absolutely
behavior. It's a continuous behavior that might be.
I'm going to have to wrap this up quickly because I know that some people have got to go to training, but Musa, you're 100% correctly. They're not one or the other, they work together. And we really need to make sure that we are doing both. Thank you very much. Sorry, I can't pronounce your name correctly. It's basically about, oh, hello, I recognize you.
Hi.
But yes, so that's great. So remember, it's all about continuous improvement. Yes, you've got to do it in the classroom, in the action at any given time, but you also need to think about your general practice and what you can improve, and that helps you develop. It maybe shows you what professional development you might choose to need, or the fact that you need to go back and review your pedagogical knowledge about something. So we are slightly over. I do apologize. I know we didn't have time for many questions. Thank you for your questions, Musa, and for everybody else.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your time. Thank you for letting me share a little bit of my passion when it comes to reflective teaching and practice in teaching. And I hope you all have a really good day. I will send out some information, and I'll be following up with the team probably in the next couple of weeks to see how you're all doing or if you've developed any further questions. Thank you. Dr. Kavita, maybe I can hand back to you.
Yeah. Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Yeah. So on behalf of CTN, I thank Ms. Deeble for taking time out and sharing her thoughts with on a wonderful topic, reflective practices. I thank all the faculty of Dhofar University for participating in the workshop and being very, very active listeners. And this session wouldn't have been possible without the able guidance and leadership of Dr. Khalid, the director of CTN. Yeah. And I would also like to thank Ms. Madiha for her meticulous coordination and Dr. Shobi for all the technical help and support he has provided for this session. And I really thank one and all for taking time out and really attending this very, very interesting session. We had a lot of interesting inputs, and especially till now, we were involved in reflective practices, but we never thought that we need to have an action plan to put things in place and put it into practice. We really thank Ms. Deeble for giving us this wonderful inputs. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'm quite happy to stay for another, I know some people have got to go. I think I got the timing slightly wrong. I thought it was 1:30, but it's 1:45. To stay and answer questions or to have any discussion with anybody about anything. But obviously those of you who have got lessons, you may want to go ahead and prepare for them. Thank you.
There are a lot of responses coming here. Thank you for this wonderful presentation, and it was a very informative session. The reflection is a systematic process to find out the best ways of teaching.
Absolutely, yeah. But yeah, if anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them or to go over some of the material. I know we went through it a little bit quicker than I would have liked, partly because the systems weren't, the annotations weren't working. So exactly what Musa was saying, I had to adapt, and you got a little bit more of me talking than I would have liked. The 5 important steps, okay, the 6, no problem at all. So basically it comes down to reacting. So looking at what happened, you need to then record or recording. So you need to document what happened in some way or another. It could be through a journal, it could be through a recording of the workshop or the presentation. It could be through peer reviews, it could be through formative assessment, various different points like that. reviewing, looking at what happened, was it successful or otherwise. Somebody had a beautiful comment in the last thing. It's not just about what went wrong. Sometimes it's about what went well and how I can make it even better or achieve greater outcomes, particularly not just about my own teaching practice, but about my students and how they are performing. So that's a really important step. So revising what can be done. How can I do something differently to actually get the results that I'm hoping to have? Then it's reworking, basically adapting based on the reflection. So am I going to change my plan? Am I going to bring in some new technology? What am I thinking is going to be the best way to move this forward? Finally, reassessing, did it work? If it didn't work, then we go back to the top of the cycle. I know that was really quick and thrown at you, but I hope that helped. Any other questions? See a few of you are still here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ossie. My pleasure. Okay. Just have a quick look at the chat. Teaching online and challenges, yes. It's a wonderful thing, but it's not necessarily as good as having that reaction. We were actually talking about this beforehand. As educators, one of the things I think all of us like is to be able to see people's reactions. And normally when I do this type of workshop, I actually can see everybody's faces. And I can see if somebody, has a question rather than having it written inside the chat box. And thank you very much, Dr. Kavita, for helping with that. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And of course, I think Dr. Sherber is with us as well. Thank you for your help with getting us back online when we dropped out.
Yeah, I don't think we have any more questions.
No, I don't think so. I think they're all finished. I do apologize if it was a little bit quick at the end. I for some reason in my head I thought it was 9:30. I don't know why. Hello, I recognize that face as well. Abdinur? I'm sure I've seen you in Salala. Probably at the university. Okay. Thank you.